Welcome back, and welcome to our very first feature called Focus on Health Law. This will be presented here by attorney and counselor at law, Mr. Kenneth Haber. Attorney Haber's headquarters is located in Boyds, Maryland. The moderator on this set is attorney Ramesh Khurana, who is from the Khurana Law Firm in Gaithersburg, Maryland. This morning, attorney Khurana questions attorney Haber on the Office of Inspector General Advisory Opinion. Let's see.
This is Ramesh Khurana, attorney at law. I have my office in Gaithersburg, and today I welcome Ken Haber, who has his office in Boyds, Maryland. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ken is the former assistant U.S. attorney and a senior attorney in the Office of Inspector General, and he of course practices in the state of Maryland, but he accepts clients from almost many states in the United States. He will use the services of local lawyers wherever required in regard to the legal representation. But I have heard of many successful stories, and today in fact I am going to ask you questions relating to the Office of Inspector General, because you are the former senior attorney in the Office of Inspector General Health and Human Health and Services.
Human Services. There was five of us at the time.
Oh, you were five. You were one of them.
I was one of them.
Oh, okay, great. And you are the right person to answer the questions relating to the Office of Inspector General. So my first question to you is, first of all, tell me, we always think about the advisory opinions which are given by the Office of Inspector General. So what is an advisory opinion and what is the sanctity which is given by the OIG?
Well, people hear in terms of the Inspector General's office giving general advice as far as what people can and can't do, and these are broadcast as an attempt to try to inform people in general about certain do's and don'ts in the healthcare and the Medicare area. But there's another aspect of the Inspector General's function in terms of notification. It's provided by statute and regulation that there's things called individual advisory opinions where physicians or suppliers or institutions that have issues dealing with Medicare, they can actually seek out and pay for an opinion. And what they're doing is paying for the time, and they're not paying for the result, because they're going to get the result that the Inspector General wants to give them based upon the facts, or that the Inspector General believes they have to give them. So they're not buying something, but they're getting guidance in any event, and they could even tailor their operations and tailor their request to the point where it is legal, where maybe they started out where it wasn't right, and then they're being told, no, you can't do it this way. And
this is a very useful tool,
yes, and then they can tailor it and say, okay, well, what if we do this? Well, then that'll be okay, and then they're going to amend their request, and the Inspector General will, of course, use the amended request. So once they come up with an opinion, then that is a binding opinion that gives the individuals who sought the opinion coverage from later on being accused of doing something wrong under the statutes as they stood at the time that they obtained the opinion. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to be able to continue doing it if the statutes change, but certainly as they are at the time of the issuance, they're doing things properly.
On that note, Ken, let's say that a healthcare provider wants to seek an opinion from the Office of Inspector General. I think it's a great tool in the hands of healthcare service provider. Instead of paying to the private practicing lawyer, whose opinion I think is not binding on the Office of Inspector General if there is some problem later on. So of course, if there is a choice, I think healthcare provider will definitely like to go to the Office of Inspector General.
Yes,
now,
but they normally use an attorney to do it.
Right. So this is what I was going to ask. Well, if they have to seek an opinion, whether they have to engage the services of a lawyer so that these questions are framed appropriately to the Office of Inspector General and their purpose is well served.
It's not required that you have an attorney.
Right.
but it certainly would help a provider, service provider, to have an attorney give guidance. Now, there's also an attorney's opinion. You can hire an attorney to give you an opinion if you give him full disclosure, and if he gives you good, solid reasonings for that opinion, and that there's no improper relationships that concocted the opinion or were in the concoction of the opinion, then that lawyer's opinion would be evidence of your
Being innocent.
good intent.
Good intent.
Your evidence. It doesn't mean that if you took money illegally from the government that you're not going to have to pay it back.
Right,
There's
right.
there's no holy water going on there and giving you protection from having to pay back money, but it's evidence of your good intent.
Yeah.
It doesn't bind the government at all. It's
Because
just-
that person made good faith efforts
'Cause
to
that
seek
person
an
made-
opinion,
exactly.
and he followed the instructions as per the opinion given by the attorney.
Exactly, and made full disclosure to the
Right.
attorney, and hopefully the individual who sought the opinion used due diligence to get an attorney who knew
Who's
what he was
knowledgeable.
talking, who's
Who's
knowledgeable, because if he goes to John Doe, the attorney who handles
Immigration matters.
immigration matters, I'm sure the government will use that against him, saying he really didn't want
Right, right,
a proper opinion.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
But
that
there-
makes sense.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
that's the concept of an attorney's opinion. If you have a good attorney, then that he's going to give you guidance, and it'll give you some protection, some evidence that you're acting in good faith. But it won't give you any protection if you're billing the government improperly, not have to pay it back, or maybe even not even have that you may even be penalized, have some of the penalties that are involved, depending upon what the specific facts are. But if you go and get an advisory opinion from the Inspector General and you make full disclosure, then, and if you follow that opinion, then you're not going to be subject to any sort of penalty unless there's changes of law that you should be aware of, and, that becomes a fact matter if you were or were not aware of, and everyone's presumed to know what the law is. So if the law changes, that advisory opinion could lose its
That would become
effectiveness.
stale. Yeah.
Yes, stale.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. When you use the term that when you are seeking an opinion from the Office of Inspector General, you have to give a full disclosure. Now I understand that's why there is a need for the healthcare provider probably to discuss the issues with the experienced attorney who
Absolutely.
understands it. Like what are the issues involved? And even when you are seeking an opinion and paying for that opinion to the Office of Inspector General, so you need to know what kinds of disclosures you have to make. If you do not fully disclose, then probably
You get in trouble.
You are in trouble. That's why there is probably a need to have a knowledgeable lawyer on your side.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, since you have worked with the Office of Inspector General and now you are in your private practice, now let's talk about some of the topics about which a healthcare provider would like to seek an opinion from the Office of Inspector General. Let us say there is a question about the anti-kickback statute. So what kinds of opinions are sought in regard to this issue? Like I gave you one example and you answered it beautifully. Like when
thank you.
Two adjoining practices by the same physician, and you said that probably there is an application of Stark law and there is an application of anti-kickback statute. So can you give us some good examples on which a referral would be sought or opinion would be sought from the Office of Inspector General?
Yes, it could be anti-kickback, it could be Stark, it could be the exclusion. What extent does the exclusion have? It could be concerning the civil money penalties that they have, the authority under the civil money penalties, and it could be even criminal type of matters, whether something is criminal or not criminal, and all these type of things they have authority to opine upon. And if they give an opinion after full disclosure of the facts, then that's going to cover you.
So the buzzword is the full disclosure.
That's a key
Right?
thing. That's a key thing.
Okay.
There are other type of advisory opinions that people obtain at times that aren't worth the paper they're written upon. And that comes from some of these vendors. They will go out and get, and I've seen it not just in healthcare, but I've seen it in tax law too, where they'll get an advisory opinion from, in the tax law, maybe from a CPA firm, and healthcare, they'll get it from a healthcare attorney maybe, or maybe they'll get it from an institute, quote unquote, an institute. And it may be, depending upon the specifics, not worth the paper it's written on, because of the fact that they want to get something that's really a promotional. And I've seen where there have been tax opinions where IRS will just come in and start cleaning up people right and left. Interestingly enough, I've seen them where they've not gone after the people selling these tax shelters, but going after the people who bought the tax shelters and used the tax shelters, although I would hope that they go after the people who are selling them. Type of situation that you'll see in healthcare would people be where they're trying to sell devices and they're telling you how you can bill for those devices and how you can make all this money. And they might, and I saw this one time where it was, they created this whole image of an institute that was not any independent institute, but they tried to create the image of it being an independent institute, and that they were giving an opinion that you can use a certain device a certain way, this sort of thing. And they had abused a client of ours, so we went after them. And by the time the dust settled, one of the people was in jail. The other person died of cancer. And I'm not saying that the cancer was related to anything we did, but just there, where they ended up, they probably would have ended up in jail. And it was because they were going around creating these illusionary type of opinions and telling people how they could use, if I recall right, it was like a stin machine that gives impulses, electrical impulses that could possibly be used to help with pain. But what they were doing is telling people that they can use it as a chemical block. How they get that out of that, I couldn't tell you, but they're telling people that they can bill it for as a chemical block, and that wasn't the way they could do it. But they made this whole brochure and everything. It was multi-pages. You've seen these tax opinions coming out where they're multi-pages and nice bindings and everything. This is how this was, and they had this whole facade of it being an institute, and they ended up, like I said, they ended up, one of them in jail and the other one dead, and I don't remember where the others ended up, but wasn't pleasant, I'm sure.
No, first of all, the question arises, does a healthcare entity have to get an advisory opinion at all? Again,
no. No,
they have to decide. Basically, management has to make a decision.
Yes.
Like if they are having some doubts about some particular part of law or regulation, then probably they want to be on the correct side of the mouth, and then probably they decide to seek an opinion.
Yes. Whether or not a hospital can have a bus circulate upon its campus free of charge for patients. I've seen that as an advisory opinion, and it was permitted under whatever circumstances and particulars were in the advisory opinion.
Right.
So you can get them for just about any type of topic, because otherwise the question becomes, is that somehow a kickback to the people who are using the free transportation?
Yeah. Okay, great. So I think you answered it very well. Now, of course, we touched upon this topic that any healthcare provider, when they have the need for an advisory opinion, they can go to probably private law firms like you. But I would like to ask you this question anyways. Can you tell me what are the other alternatives to seeking advisory opinion from the Office of Inspector General?
Oh, well, there's private attorneys, and if you don't have it from, a good private attorney, if you don't have it from the Office of Inspector General, there are consultants out there, but you have to be careful. Some of them very well know their business. They can be coding consultants and experts, and they might have, expertise that I might want to use certain people that I know of, when it comes to certain coding issues. So I mean, like that's sort of an advisory opinion. The difficulty with billing and everything is often a lack of communications between the coder and the provider of the service, and this has to be something that is always watched and kept properly maintained.
Great. As always, time is short while we are indulging these interesting questions answers. I must appreciate your coming to the studio and answering these questions. Thank you very much, Ken.
I thank you for having me here.
Thank you.